Ohio, once a symbol of the American middle class, is now grappling with a growing homelessness crisis that's being overlooked. This issue is putting immense strain on the state's housing and social systems, revealing a deeper, more disturbing reality. Behind the statistics are real people, young adults just trying to survive, seniors on the edge, and families desperately holding on. The need for long-term compassionate solutions is urgent. Will Ohio rise to the challenge, or will this crisis define its future? One, the harsh reality of homelessness in Ohio. Ohio's homelessness crisis is no longer a quiet issue. It's a loud, undeniable problem shaking the state's foundations. In 2024, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development reported 11,759 homeless individuals in Ohio on a single night, with 256 of them in Franklin County, home to Columbus. That's a 7.4% increase from the year before. But those numbers tell only part of the story. Thousands more are invisible families living in cars behind strip malls, seniors freezing in tents, or young adults couch surfing their struggles hidden under layers of shame. While 80% manage to find temporary shelter, 1 in 5 is left to endure life under bridges or in dark parking lots, exposed to the harsh elements and hopelessness.
You need some water or anything? I've been doing this, working with the homeless population since 1994. What I've seen is it's increased over time. There's more and more homeless people. The shelters have had to get bigger, and everything's kind of busting at the seams. Being in Ohio, we have a lot of wooded areas, and I'd say 75% of the homeless people right now are in wooded areas or living in camps. And the system overall seems to keep pushing them further back into the wood.
Take Sandra, a 70-year-old grandmother from Columbus. After a lifetime as a nurse, medical bills wiped out her savings, and she found herself in a shelter rationing her medications just to get by. "I never imagined this would be my life," she says, her voice trembling with emotion. Sandra's story is not unique. Rising rents, which have surged by 32% since 2019, are leaving Ohioans behind while wages remain stagnant. The state faces a shortage of 264,000 affordable housing units, trapping the most vulnerable in a cycle of despair. Experts predict homelessness could rise by 10 to 15% by 2026 unless decisive action is taken. Shelters are overflowing, hospitals are overwhelmed by untreated illnesses, and public spaces like parks and libraries have become places of refuge for those with nowhere else to turn. This crisis isn't just about a lack of housing, it's about the breakdown of compassion and priorities. Crime rates are climbing, children are falling behind in school, and seniors like Sandra are left to face indignity. Ohio, once a symbol of strength and perseverance, now stands at a critical moment in history. Will it rise to the challenge with solutions that truly match the scale of this crisis, or will it allow this despair to define its legacy? This documentary aims to capture the human cost of that decision. Two, on the brink, Ohio's vulnerable. Ohio's homelessness crisis is more than a statistic. It's a growing storm that hits the most vulnerable the hardest.
just the fact that we should not have 1.6 million youth in America homeless.
The young, especially LGBTQ+ individuals aged 18 to 24, are often rejected by families or face abuse, finding themselves abandoned on Ohio's streets. Many end up sleeping in vacant buildings or bouncing from one couch to the next, their futures consumed by the struggle to survive day to day. In 2024, their numbers grew with no safety nets to protect them from falling deeper into despair. Seniors are just as vulnerable, teetering on the edge of hopelessness. In Franklin County, homelessness among those 65 and older increased by 36% in just 1 year, as fixed incomes buckle under the weight of rising medical costs and rent hikes, which have surged 32% since 2019. Take John, a 70-year-old Cleveland veteran, now living out of his rusty pickup truck after decades of service. "I fought for this country," he says, his voice heavy with betrayal, "but now I'm fighting just to stay alive." John's story is one of many trapped by Ohio's critical shortage of affordable housing, 264,000 units to be exact. Single-parent families, especially those headed by mothers, live on the edge. A missed paycheck or a childcare crisis can lead to eviction. In 2023-24, more than 2,500 Ohio students, 1.5% of all enrolled, experienced homelessness. These children, carrying everything they own in backpacks, face chronic absenteeism at a staggering 58.6%, nearly double the state average. This not only robs them of an education, but also their sense of hope for the future. Veterans like John, along with low-wage workers, including many immigrants without legal protections, are just one emergency away from homelessness. They're often caught in bureaucratic delays in critical programs like HUD-VASH. Ohio's homelessness crisis reveals a system that is failing its most vulnerable citizens, youth, seniors, and families who now stand on the brink. Will the state offer them a lifeline, or will it let them fall further into the abyss? 3. Fraying safety net, Ohio's political storm. Ohio's homelessness crisis is not just a matter of numbers, it's a glaring sign of a safety net falling apart under intense pressure. For vulnerable Ohioans like Ellen and John, the social welfare system should be a lifeline. Yet instead of offering support, Ohio's safety net is fraying, and in some cases, it's entirely unraveling. Political battles over budgets and policy shifts often leave the homeless in limbo, trapped in a cycle of short-term fixes that fail to address the root causes of the crisis. One key pillar of Ohio's affordable housing efforts, the Housing Trust Fund, is facing a proposed overhaul by the Ohio House that could divert millions of dollars from low-income initiatives. Critics argue that this could undo years of fragile progress, leaving families, seniors, and veterans without the resources they desperately need. Though local efforts have shown some promise, they are fighting an uphill battle against systemic challenges. In 2025, Columbus increased its homelessness budget by $1.4 million, bringing the total to nearly $6 million. This was a step in the right direction, showing that compassion can guide policy. Cleveland's A Home for Every Neighbor initiative has also made an impact, housing 154 individuals and closing 47 encampments by April 2025. These successes are vital, yet they hang in the balance as federal funding remains uncertain. The situation in Ohio is a microcosm of a nationwide crisis. By 2026, 11,000 Ohioans could be among the 60,000 Americans at risk of eviction if Congress doesn't renew funding for the Emergency Housing Voucher Program, leaving millions of people without options. A troubling trend is also emerging in Ohio laws that criminalize homelessness. In several cities, encampment bans are being passed under the guise of public safety. These laws push homeless people further into the shadows out of sight, but still struggling with the same dire circumstances. Rather than addressing Ohio's 264,000 unit housing shortage or the rising rents, these laws simply displace people offering no real solutions. This punitive wave is sweeping the nation as well. From protests to lawsuits, the battle between compassion and control is playing out in courts and legislatures. Yet the growing divide continues to stall meaningful progress. Ohio now stands at a crossroads. Its most vulnerable residents are hanging in the balance. Will Ohio's leaders strengthen the safety net with stable funding and policies that reflect humanity, or will they allow the systemic failures to deepen the crisis even further? The answer is not just in Ohio's hands, but in the larger struggle to confront the forces driving homelessness across the country. Beneath the surface, Ohio's root causes. As Ohio's safety net phrase, the question lingers: what deeper forces drive this crisis, leaving the homeless in America stranded? Beneath the surface, Ohio's homelessness epidemic stems from a tangle of economic, social, and systemic failures that trap the vulnerable, like Ellen and John, in a relentless cycle. At the heart lies a housing market spiraling out of reach. From 2019 to 2024, rents in Columbus surged 32%, while service sector wages inched up just 8%. This gap pushes nearly half of Ohio's renters into cost-burden status spending, over 30% of their income, on rent, leaving little for food, medicine, or emergencies. For many, one unexpected bill, a car repair, a hospital stay, means eviction. Take Maria, a single mother in Cincinnati. After losing her retail job, she faced a $200 rent she couldn't pay. With Ohio's affordable housing shortage 264,000 units short for low-income families, she and her 2 children now drift between motels and friends' couches. "I'm not just fighting for a home," she says, tears in her eyes. "I'm fighting to keep my kids' hope alive." Maria's story reflects a brutal reality. Eviction filings in Ohio's major cities like Franklin County hit over 44,000 annually, often targeting the poor who can't afford legal defense or miss court due to work. Beyond economics, mental health and substance use disorders deepen the crisis. Roughly 24% of the homeless in America battle severe mental health conditions, and 18% struggle with substance use. In Ohio, federal grants pour in, yet community-based mental health programs remain scarce, especially in rural areas. Is addiction a cause of homelessness, or a desperate response to it? For many, like John the veteran in his rusted pickup, the streets amplify struggles that systems fail to address. Without accessible care, the cycle persists. The housing shortage compounds these issues. For every 100 low-income households in Ohio, only 40 affordable units exist. Section 8. Waitlists stretch years or freeze entirely, and even voucher holders like Maria face landlords who refuse them or units that fail basic standards. Eviction's often a first resort rather than a last hit, hardest at the margins, single mothers, veterans, immigrants pushing them into shelters or worse. These forces, skyrocketing rents, stagnant wages, scarce mental health support, and a housing market tilted against the poor, interlock like gears in a machine, grinding down Ohio's most vulnerable. The homeless in America face these same barriers from California to New York, but Ohio's crisis, with its 15% projected rise by 2026, demands action now. Shelters can't hold the tide, hospitals can't heal the fallout, and criminalizing homelessness only buries the problem. If Ohio's leaders fail to confront these root causes, economic inequity, housing scarcity, and untreated mental health needs, what hope remains for those on the brink? Can we rebuild a system that catches people like Ellen, John, and Maria before they fall? Or will we let this crisis carve a deeper wound? Action or Mirage? Ohio's homelessness fight. As Ohio's safety net continues to unravel, leaving individuals like Ellen, John, and Maria desperately holding on, a critical question arises: are the government's efforts to combat homelessness a true lifeline or just a fleeting mirage? In Columbus, the Key to Home partnership launched in 2023 offers a glimmer of hope. It has already housed over 330 people, providing vital services like mental health care, job training, and more. Families who once lived in tents now have a place to call home, their relief visible and real. But this progress is fragile. Bureaucratic red tape and restrictive zoning laws continue to choke housing projects, halting much needed progress. In Cleveland, the A Home for Every Neighbor initiative also makes strides, housing 154 people and dismantling 47 encampments by April 2025. Still, these successes are hanging by a thread, with dwindling federal funding threatening to undo much of the progress. By 2026, 7,000 Ohioans, part of 60,000 Americans nationwide, will be at risk of eviction due to the expiration of the Emergency Housing Voucher Program. Meanwhile, some cities in Ohio are taking a darker approach, passing laws that criminalize homelessness. These measures, disguised as public safety actions, merely push individuals like John into even more dangerous spaces, offering no real solutions, only a deeper sense of despair. At the same time, the root causes, Ohio's 264,000 unit housing shortage, skyrocketing rents, and inadequate mental health services, remain largely unaddressed. For every person who finds housing, countless others are left stranded, trapped in a system that prioritizes appearances over empathy. Programs like Key to Home prove what can be achieved when compassion leads the way, but they rely heavily on inconsistent funding cycles, making them vulnerable to shifting political winds. Ohio's response to homelessness often feels like a hollow performance rather than a steadfast commitment to change. What can be done to ensure lasting solutions that go beyond temporary gestures? How can communities ensure that successful programs like A Home for Every Neighbor survive long after 2025? These are the questions that must be answered now, not just for Ohio's most vulnerable, but for the broader fight against homelessness nationwide. Will we demand real accountability to create a system that saves lives, or will we settle for fleeting mirages that disappear under scrutiny? Forging a future Ohio solutions. As Ohio struggles to address its homelessness crisis, we must ask ourselves, how can we create a future where no one like Ellen, John, or Maria falls through the cracks? The root causes are clear: soaring rents, up 32% since 2019, wages rising only 8%, and a severe shortage of 264,000 other affordable housing units. These issues demand bold, lasting solutions. The first step is for Ohio to adopt the Housing First model. This approach focuses on providing permanent housing without preconditions and then offering the support services such as counseling and job training that individuals need to thrive. This could transform lives. Take Maria, for example, moving from a motel room to a stable apartment with her children, their hope renewed. Eviction prevention must be a top priority as well. Programs like legal mediation and emergency rental assistance, which have proven effective in other areas, can help keep families in their homes. With Ohio seeing over 44,000 evictions each year, many of them targeting low-income families who can't afford legal representation, this kind of support is crucial. Ohio also needs to invest in expanding affordable housing. This means increasing low-income housing tax credits, updating outdated zoning laws, and offering incentives for developers to convert abandoned buildings into vibrant, supportive communities. Right now, for every 100 low-income households, there are only 40 affordable units. Section 8 waitlists stretch for years, leaving families like Maria's stranded without help. Temporary shelters and punitive laws only push people further into despair. Rather than offering a pathway out, these measures often displace people, making it harder for them to rebuild their lives. A real-time data system could be a game changer, ensuring that resources are directed where they're most needed, whether it's for those sleeping in tents or hiding in the shadows. Despite some efforts like Columbus's Key to Home program, which has housed 330 people, these solutions are scattered and underfunded. To truly address Ohio's homelessness crisis, we need consistent, unwavering financial support, not just temporary grants. Without bold reforms, Ohio's homeless population could soar to 13,000 by 2026, overwhelming shelters and hospitals alike. So we must ask, what would a comprehensive housing program look like in your community? Can local leaders prioritize homes over headlines? How can we protect families from eviction's cruel grip? These questions challenge every Ohioan to demand change. The time has come to act. Our collective call, ending Ohio's crisis. When systems fail, Ohio's heart must rise a vivid echo of the fight for the homeless in America. Ellen, John, and Maria, our neighbors, face a crisis of 11,759 homeless in 2024, with 13,000 still looming by 2026. Cleveland's A Home for Every Neighbor, housing 154 souls, proves hope is possible, yet shelters strain and despair grows. Can you volunteer an hour? Donate a blanket. Advocate for housing. Housing is a right, not a luxury. Will we unite fearlessly to lift our vulnerable, or let apathy prevail? Ohio's future hinges on us acting now to reclaim our compassion.